Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey, and by the Michigan Economic Development Corporation.
Hey, Gary, everything going good for you out there?
It absolutely is, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I can't wait to get into the show. I am so curious about this concept of connecting the brakes on your car to the internet.
Yeah, we're going to get there. But first, I know we don't do dates anymore, but there's an important date. And June 16th next year will be a Friday. It won't be a Thursday, so I got to get it in today. So what company was incorporated? We'll be talking about this company later on in the show. Was incorporated in 1903 today.
Well, 1903 makes me think Ford Motor Company.
Bingo.
But I thought you were going to say next June is going to be the 100th running of the 24 Hours of Le Mans.
But will it happen on a Thursday, John?
No, not on a Thursday.
See,
that's
so
right.
I always have to get it on this date. So yeah. you got it in one. So yeah, let's.
I love it. We haven't done dates in a while, but I love it.
So let's bring in our guests, our guest and our journalist friend.
Yeah.
So we got Rich Nesbitt, who's the head of product management, chassis systems control at Bosch. Welcome, Rich.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And our friend Jack Keebler from Keebler Auto.
Yeah.
It's been a while, Jack.
It has.
Jack, great to have you here. I don't think we should call you a journalist. You're really more a consultant now, right?
I do quite a bit of consulting. Yes. Occasionally, though, Automotive News will call and say, "Hey, what can you do on 5G?"
That's great. Well, let's get back to Rich. Gary pitched this idea to me, or talked to me about this. He said you gave a fascinating presentation on brakes and why brakes need to be connected to the internet. And I went, that sounds so ridiculous. We got to do a show on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's, we had the press event last week and we really introduced this topic of, connected brake systems. All of our new brake systems are 100% IoT ready. And, we're preparing for the future and deploying it now.
So, but why? I mean, it just seems silly.
I'd like to switch it around and say, why not? We have this technology available. We have, really intelligent brake systems. We're generating lots of data. And, if we think about the trends in the market, development times aren't getting shorter. We're adding complexity. So let's leverage, the things we have and the intelligence we have to really bring, faster time to market, higher quality, or in our case, maintain the level of quality we have in the market and, bring that through connected.
Yeah, superficially, it sort of sounds a little spooky to have your brakes connected to the internet. Does that mean anybody can apply my brakes for me, or?
No. It really, when we think about it, and I introduced this in the press conference, there's really two aspects of it. There's, let's say, pre-development and let's say, when it's in the field post-SOP. And if we think about in the development phase, it's really, the vehicles that we have within our fleet or the OEMs have within their fleet. And it's enabling, deployment of software through flash over the air. It's, really understanding the use cases, continually understanding the data that we get from it, from our brake systems, and then continually analyzing that, refining requirements, making updates again, and then, flashing new software. And again, repeating the cycle, kind of rinse and repeat. And in that sense, there's a lot of cybersecurity available in place. If we think about post SOP, all of those security measures carry over. I think you guys, are well aware of the trend of cybersecurity. Bosch is highly invested in cybersecurity. Of course, there's aspects of it we have to work with an OEM partner. It's not like our brake systems have its own antenna and ability to connect to the internet. We're engaging in enabling this connected vehicle type platform and bringing that data then to the OEMs.
Yeah, there's already an interesting story out there. Maybe you've heard about it, John and Gary. Tesla had an issue with some cars that were tested by Consumer Reports, where the stopping distances were a little long, and there was concern about the number of points that the model had racked up. And apparently, Elon was able to make an adjustment to the pulse width for the anti-lock braking system and shorten his braking distances to get himself a better rating from Consumer Reports, which is, that's kind of what Rich is talking about.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rich.
I was gonna say that's one of the aspects of having a connected vehicle, a connected brake system, is really this flash over the air.
Right.
And you talk specifically about a performance calibration, which is an aspect of it. It could also be a feature. Let's say you've you purchase a vehicle and it's 2022. It's a connected brake system, and we come up with a new feature, and maybe that we can deploy that feature in the future once it's validated and safe, and there it is.
Well, brakes do more than brake today, right? They provide traction, and they pass power to the other side of the car when you're in slippery conditions. So there's a lot of interesting little tweaks you can do sort of while you're rolling, right?
Yeah, and I think we're beyond now the days, or we're advancing past the days of a simple vacuum booster and maybe an ESP module. We have our advanced braking systems like our iBooster or our integrated power brake, where really the combination of actuation and modulation are in one really intelligent brake system. So there's ability to make a lot of different features and functions and provide value to the end consumer.
So let's walk through getting to here. So you guys brought out ABS in 1978, and guys like Jack were like, "I can brake better than that, Ken. I don't want that."
And we quickly found out we couldn't.
Right. And then in '86, you guys brought out traction control, which is Jack mentioned. You're using the brakes for that. Then in '95 there was ESP. And then in 2010, predictive emergency braking. So, I'm seeing that you guys are, just incrementally adding to the amount of technology that is, what someone might think is a rather simple system. Is this, IoT just another milepost on the road?
Yeah, I think that's a really good analogy, right? As we add content, as we add features, connected's kind of the next domain. We can have, again, these flash over the air, these updates, these features, but more than that, right? We can provide value from the information we gather from the environment. There's only 4 things that really touch the road on a vehicle, right? Tires, the brakes are the next step, and we have a lot of information around that. So we can gather a ton of data, or we are gathering a ton of data inherent to the brake system. And if we can process that in a very intelligent way and provide not only knowledge, but we say wisdom with this connected service, maybe it's an audible warning or a visual warning to a driver that there's a slippery surface coming up. You mentioned, right, ABS, traction, stability control, all those things provide some indication of the surface friction or of a hazard potentially. And if we can share that knowledge or that data, and then, share it through a cloud and connected services, we can provide warnings. Drivers can slow down. They can change their driving behavior, inherently making a vehicle safer.
So there's also a sort of a vehicle to vehicle aspect to this. So like if you've got a car up ahead of you on the highway, he encounters some slippery conditions. The car gets a little out of shape. It through sensors, it reads all that, and then it can pass the information back behind it to the following traffic, particularly if there's something significant going on, and that would provide an adjustment that might make it much easier for these folks to stay safe.
Yeah, essentially that's the thought. It doesn't even have to be directly V2V. Think about these connected brake services are really connected to a cloud and a data service. So as that vehicle encounters this, right, it's sending data up to the cloud, and then the vehicle behind it is pulling data down off the cloud. And again, you have this warning or this notification that there's a potential hazard.
Rich, where's this all going in the sense that when I talk to the tire companies, they're trying to collect tire data with their tires. I talk to the steering people, they're collecting data with their steering. Now it's the brakes too. is it going to be everything, or isn't there just some way for the car to figure all this out without having discrete IoT connections for each major component?
I think that's one of the, I'd say, advantages of a company like Bosch, right? We have a lot of different modules, components, divisions, pieces of that puzzle within our own company. We are constantly looking for ways to work together to bring a package of value to our OEMs and thus our end consumers. Each part of that is a little aspect, right? The brake system needs to be kind of IoT ready, the steering system IoT ready, and we can share this data between modules and really, end up with a connected car and really extend that value.
So when you're collecting data, is it, literally down at the brake pads themselves? Is it through the ABS unit? How are you collecting it?
Yeah, primarily through the sensors that are connected to, either the ESP unit or our integrated power brake, or even through our iBooster. There's various sensors, whether it's the wheel speed sensor,
Right.
It could be a brake pad wear sensor,
Yep.
the sensing accelerometers and IMUs that we have on the vehicle. So a lot of different sensors and data is really bringing all this knowledge. But it's also a really interesting aspect. There's tons of data, right? And you can kind of flood the system with too much data. So that's why we're really focused on what we call edge computing and using some of the extra compute power within our brake systems to not just provide data, but really, the knowledge and then the wisdom of that data. So it's more than just, pouring data over an internet connection, but really providing useful and tactical data.
So is that the kind of thing that you might be able to use for predictive maintenance or prognostics for brake wear or something like that?
Yeah, that's one of the aspects we see. We call it remote state of health. As you use your vehicle, as and of course it can be very use case dependent. I have a basically 35-mile commute. It's very casual. I don't do a lot of braking. My use case will be very different if you're then,
Right.
We talked about Phoenix earlier. It could be Phoenix city traffic, right?
Right.
So with we understanding how that vehicle is used, we could provide some, predictive diagnostics or prognostics and give also some warning, particularly value if you own a fleet, maybe you're a small business owner,
Right.
or even a larger business owner, and you're trying to understand and schedule your predictive maintenance, schedules. You can line it up, right? Because hey, this truck's being used that way, this truck's being used a different way, and really schedule that out and maximize the usage of your team.
So Rich, it seems to me that there's a lot of information that'd be shared on the CAN bus within a particular vehicle. And is it what you're doing is saying, okay, we're going to tap into that information and pull it out, or
share it?
Or is it an entirely different suite of information that you're interested in for the IoT aspect of it versus, the braking and performance of a given vehicle?
I think it's a little bit of a combination of both. Of course, an ESP unit or an iBooster is connected to the vehicle via a CAN bus or some sort of network communication. But also we have, a lot of the sensors are connected directly to us, and therefore we have some inherent built-in information that we think is valuable and then, could share out. But also with our connected, brake systems, we could take, for example, data from other modules, right? Also add to that, via the CAN bus, maybe it's steering, maybe it's our powertrain friends, where we can then combine the data and make even more, knowledge, wisdom, and share that back then to the cloud.
For example, like with a steering system, when you crank in steering angle, the more steering angle you crank in, the incipient lock point changes. So if you've got a lot of steering, angle cranked in, and the driver's trying to stop as hard as they can, but you kind of want to keep them right at that tractive limit without going over it. Those two, to your point, Gary, CAN buses can kind of share that information back and forth and keep it right at incipient lock and give you max braking, max steer.
So Rich, who's going to be collecting the information? Is Bosch going to be collecting it, or will the automakers do it?
Who owns this data?
Well, at Bosch, we inherently believe the end consumer, owns the data. But, when we talk about collecting the data and using it, it's really comes down to a partnership with the OEM. And we can, of course, we have a data lake service that we can utilize and share with an OEM. or they can, some OEMs have their own services. But again, then we would provide the knowledge or wisdom out of this connected brake service, and it would go up to their data lake, their cloud service, and then of course we could share that as well.
So what do the OEMs tell you? I mean, there's value in that data, obviously. That's got to come into the price negotiations, I would imagine, that they're demanding discounts if you're going to collect this data. How's that all working out?
Well, that's one of the, I'd say, challenges that we approach when we come to this. I think in the pre-development or pre-SOP phase, there's a lot of mutual benefit in having, very high quality, parts and development and that speed of development. But again, of course, there's negotiations when it comes to the data and how to provide the value. And of course, we think we're providing a value, and they think they're providing a value. So that's part of the discussion.
Yeah, I only ask because everywhere I go, all the suppliers are talking about who gets the data, how much of the data do they get, how much does this factor into pricing and what they're selling to the OEMs and the like.
Yeah.
Rich, from a physical point of view, what's the difference between an IoT brake and the brake that I have on a car right now?
For us, we think it's the software suite that we've created that really generates this wisdom. So again, this edge computing part of it, where we can process the data into digestible or tactical, usable pieces of information, not just raw data, and then providing that through the data client, and of course then on the back end of it, these cloud services.
And the telematics.
The telematics. So again, in the pre-development phase, we have connected units that we can add to the vehicles, and also provide the full suite of technology and connected. In general, in the OEM, once you get into the the post SOP phase, it's really how do we do that? I mean, of course, we could also provide a connected unit, but I think the OEMs with the integration of antennas, et cetera, also have some additional ideas.
So if we had two cars on a test track, okay, one had the IoT brakes and one didn't, and you went to 50 and then they put on the brakes. I mean, would there be any difference discernible?
No, I think the end consumer wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Even there's really no physical difference. It feels the same. The difference would be, if once they return back to the test track, we could pull down the data, or maybe we already have and we've got it up on the screen, and we could, immediately start analyzing the data, understanding, and what changes would need to be made, improvements, if anything went very positive that we could learn from.
So it's not just software that changes, though, right, Rich? I mean, the materials the brakes are made out, the metals used for the calipers and things, or the pads themselves, those materials might change given that you're getting this additional level of information.
I mean, that's a piece of, I'd say, knowledge that we could then apply,
right.
Particularly if you think about a use case, really trying to understand the final use case. You could come up with, hey, if we think about electric vehicles, we're trying to braking, maybe the usage is going way down. So, maybe you can cover the same amount of miles. You need, less pad thickness.
Absolutely.
Or, maybe even a different material, or
right.
you could downsize rotors. Those are some of the knowledge that you can gain from having more information regarding, or even online information, like that active or continuous information flow around a brake system.
I mean, one area I think you could do a better job of fine tuning is for, say, something like noise or vibration with brake pads, where let's say you've got a lot of mid-sized customers. They don't drive very aggressively. They don't drive quickly. They don't hammer the brakes. They drive socially, and so they don't need a really aggressive.
Jack,
responsibly. Good word. So they don't need that really aggressive pad. So you can kind of change the composition of the brake pad to sort of do a better job for noise and vibration, to support what they like about driving the vehicle versus, say, somebody that drives a performance car that might be willing to put up with a little bit more brake dust, a little bit more noise, or a little bit more vibration, because you're tapped into that group of folks that are using that particular model.
Yeah, I think, also we see, through software, through, electrification, that also offers an opportunity for customization.
Right.
And if you can recognize that early on, right, then, and take that data, say, hey, we we recognize that you're, a driver. We'll use the word responsible driver. We would recommend brake pad A, B, or C, right?
Right.
So next time you go to your dealership, for you could change this.
Fine tune.
Yeah. Or in the vice versa. I mean, you said, hey, maybe they are an aggressive driver.
Right.
Say, hey, we noticed, or even on the weekends, you're doing some track days or track events. Be aware, this could be a suggestion.
Very cool.
Rich, what are your customers? What are the car companies saying to you about this? It sounds pretty cool to me, but what are they telling you? Are they clamoring to get this in as fast as possible, or what's going on?
I see there's a lot of interest. I think, you brought up a point about there's it's not always easy, right? It's easy to say we're all interested in doing it, right? But we got to figure it out.
We don't want it to cost anything.
Yeah, of course, right. But also, I mean, it's a lot of data, right? And figuring that out, and the security of it, and the protection of that. And also, are we going to utilize the Bosch data cloud or an OEM data cloud? So I think there's a ton of interest. I'd say also we're kind of on the beginning of it. So, we say a lot of things about, we see these opportunities, and maybe not all of them are 100% concrete. But my team really challenges also to say, hey, let's start now. Let's get connected, and we'll, the uses will come. We feel that we can really improve some safety aspects. We can provide valuable data, and therefore, let's get connected.
Where do you see this really catching on first? I mean, right off the bat, it sounds like the commercial segment, fleets, would be a natural for this. But I imagine even hardcore car enthusiasts who track their cars and everything, or even the motor racing crowd would be interested in this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the kind of the adoption is, I think can go across the board. If I think about really enhancing safety, or I think, if I look at my kids, I mean, almost everything's connected, right? And the value and the data the knowledge they can get out of this connected services. But I think, like you said, naturals. For me, fleets would be clamoring for this, or should be clamoring for this if they're not already. I remember going, starting at autocross way back in, probably 20 years ago, right? There was just now like these add-ons, with little G chips. Well, now the cars have so much data on them. You could really refine your track day experience or your autocross experience through these services. But I think, again, when we get mass deployment and we get large amounts of data about not only driving surfaces, or the driving road surfaces change, it could even be deterioration. Maybe the municipalities or governments are interested in, understanding if there's a new rough road surface or a pothole, it could be notified. Or again, really near and dear to my heart is really the safety of the overall system. And if we can, provide a warning to a driver about a slip-free surface upcoming, or an accident or something like that, just saving one life is worth it as well.
So Rich, you mentioned road surfaces. Would that also, so this stuff would probably migrate to like shock absorbers, like to the suspension parts of the car too?
Yeah, or even if we think about advanced sensing, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a shock absorber. It could be a sensing element, even at the wheel end. And you say, okay, hey, wow, I would normally expect the chassis response to an impact to be X, right? And now we're getting something outside of that. And we could, also, we talked about prognostics earlier, just send a notification, right? It could be the simple email, or you say, hey, we noticed that the vehicle is behaving a little bit out of the norm, have your shock absorbers checked.
Well, it'd be pretty cool for these municipalities to know, when a pothole happens. In other words, if you've got enough cars out there, they're acting almost like a migrating, sensing system that's all over the roads. you'd know right away when a pothole opened up, and
Come on,
maybe
Jack,
even have a location
you know,
for it, right?
you know they know where the potholes are. This is not a secret to them. So, but okay. So Rich, you're talking about using this data for developing better brakes, using the data for maintenance, repair, replacement, what have you. Is there the possibility that you could use these sensors that are on the brakes such that in real time, in emergency situations, the brakes could do a better job? It'd be a smart brake, as it were.
I mean, inherently, we're always limited to road surface interface, right? I mean, you can only stop a vehicle or turn a vehicle as fast or as hard as the road surface interface allows. I think really that's where, if we can think about a warning or some sort of notification prior to an event or prior to really meeting emergency, that's where the value is. I think, again, that connected service where you have a warning, and it could even be an active warning, right? We could, you could, whether it's close the gaps on the pads to rotor, or even applying a slight decel, or if you think, a driver's drowsy, you could do like a little brake snub to kind of maybe startle them or wake them up. So there are opportunities for, sharing this knowledge so that we don't necessarily have to get into an emergency situation, but also, prevent, or, and if you slow a vehicle down a little bit, it goes a long way.
Rich, when might we see these IoT brakes show up in production?
So we have all of our new brake systems. So anything, going into the field now would be IoT ready. Again, we have to work with the OEMs to deploy it. We have some instances where we have things in the field today. But again, we're really at the beginning of it, and we, continue to work with the OEM partners every day to try to make more and more and connect more and more brake systems.
So you're putting the capability in now, and all an automaker would have to do is unlock that capability at some point?
Correct.
And so what, you have a modem, or does it connect to something else in the car that's got a modem? How do you unlock that?
Again, usually, we would work with the OEM partner, and they have their own, connected, some sort of modem connection through the service. And if they needed something from Bosch, we could also work with them on that. But then again, in the pre-SOP phase, really in the development phase where hardcore engineering is going on, we have connected units we can add to the vehicle. We can start connecting right away.
So it sounds like, if you're putting this in already, it sounds like it must be very inexpensive to do.
I mean, yeah, I would say it's cost effective.
Okay, that's the right word. Just like responsible drivers.
Yes.
It's not cost prohibitive. I mean, it's the cost of entry isn't astronomical, and again, there's a lot of value gained out of it.
Is it mostly just software then, or are you adding any hardware or mechanical components to the system?
So we have to make sure we have enough compute power within the ECUs or in the computers on board. But again, if we are adding our own connected unit, particularly in the pre-SOP phases, yeah, we have a small unit we add that provides the cellular connection.
Mm-hmm.
So does this add sensors to the mix, or are they sensors that are already there?
Yeah, we can utilize the existing sensor set. We also have, a full suite of sensors within the Bosch portfolio. And if there's additional, knowledge that we want to gather from a vehicle, we could also, think about adding additional sensing as well.
So yeah, that's one of the interesting things. You guys make your own sensors, which is probably a nice thing to have nowadays.
Yep, absolutely.
So are there sensors now in cars for measuring brake wear that will upload? So
we have a brake pad wear sensor within our portfolio.
Okay.
That kind of does an active measurement of a brake pad, and that's not that sensor is not directly connected. It would have to work through a connected system. It could connect to our brake system, and then provide value there. It could also be just as simple as a driver information center message, right? To say, hey, check your brakes. Or
are you also checking things like the length of the pedal travel?
We have, and we if in a system like an iBooster or an integrated power brake, we have travel pedal sensors. We also have pressure sensors. so we can, make sure that, or check, like you said, if there's a discrepancy between, travel and output.
Exactly. Okay.
Well, it's just amazing to see how much of these capabilities are getting added to cars these days. And, the opportunity that it offers in collecting all this data, analyzing the data, potentially even monetizing the data, but definitely helping engineers engineer better systems in the future. It's really impressive to see what you guys are doing, Rich.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thanks so much for coming on Autoline After Hours and sharing that with us and our audience here, because I love that, when Gary told me they're connecting the brakes to the internet, it's like, okay, we got to get to the bottom of this one.
Well, it's my pleasure. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Rich.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks much. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to be back talking about more things automotive.
How do Bridgestone tires stop shorter on wet roads? It's their HydroTrack technology. But you don't have to know how the science works, just where the brake is. What really matters is their Bridgestone.
The future of Michigan is extraordinarily bright. We have such incredible assets, and I think more and more we're realizing how to put those together in a way that's going to help this state really help lead the nation as we go forward.
And we're back. So yeah, kind of interesting. More and more connectivity to the cloud, and it's just amazing the amount of data that these car companies and suppliers are able to collect.
John, this subject is pretty interesting. And also, I noticed this week that Ford had its recall with the Mach-E.
Right.
And they've got, almost 50,000 vehicles. I guess they're going to have to do some updating to software. And I wondered, because the Mach-E is an electric vehicle, and my assumption is most EVs today are going to be connected to the internet. I was wondering why Ford couldn't download the new software wirelessly, while the car's parked in your driveway or in your garage at work. It sounds like they're going to have all those owners come back to the dealerships, whether it's a Ford or a Lincoln. I wonder why they're coming back to the dealership versus maybe trying to do an over-the-air update.
Jack, I can only speculate. I don't know why they can't do it. Seemingly, they should be able to.
Right? Yeah.
But is Ford got some deal with its dealers that we're going to protect you guys?
Possibly.
You're not going to see all the service work go away. Because didn't they do, there was a software update to unlock their version of Super Cruise. What do they call it? Blue
Cruise or
Blue
something.
Cruise, right.
Cruise.
Yeah.
And they told people to take their car back to the dealership for that software update.
Right.
And that's the first time when I went, I wonder if they're doing this is to just ease their dealers into this new era when so much can be done over the air that, at least for the time being, they're forcing customers to go to dealers. I don't know.
I'm not so sure that there's not an OTA for this. I seem to recall reading that there is an OTA that you can do. And I think that some people perhaps just might not feel comfortable with that and want the assurance of doing that. And I think that the Mach-E situation is certainly a black eye for Ford in terms of its move to electric vehehals. But just think about
it's no worse than the Bolt situation at General Motors.
Correct.
That's true.
They had to recall a year's worth of production.
Right.
So that was a tough one. A tough one.
And look, all automakers have got problems with recalls. They all face it. In fact, we stopped reporting on recalls because it happens so every day of the week there's a recall, literally, or every week certainly. But Ford has got some real big problems with recalls and warranty. That go far beyond, they just recalled nearly 3 million vehicles.
Right.
And
then the engine stuff on the Broncos.
Right. And they've got transmission control problems with the Maverick and the Bronco Sport. There's some serious issues going on there.
Is it serious issues, or is it just they had a whole lot of new product coming out? Because, there are going to be little issues.
Okay. So the 2.9 million vehicles were from 2013 to 21. So that's not
just
new
ones.
vehicle stuff, right?
That's fair. That's fair. At
so-
least
so
that
yeah,
one. The Mach-E is a different situation, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the Mach-E is certainly a different situation, but you know, the thing that I wonder about is that, you know, and John, we've talked about this on the show before. I mean, there seems to be a pattern here where Ford is putting out products or holding back products until they can put the products out because they found out that there are issues. I mean, you know, that thing with, you know, you mentioned the Bronco, you know, not the Bronco Sport, but the Bronco itself. I mean, when NHTSA said we're going to open an investigation on these 2.7 liter V6 EcoBoost engines because there is catastrophic failure, you know, that's a big problem. And, you know, and I've got to believe that you know, they didn't invent that engine last week. I mean,
right.
So what's
it's
going on there?
I believe it's a systemic problem. I believe it's a process problem. I believe it is a structural problem. You know, as I've said, the suppliers don't sort out the bad parts and ship those to Ford. That's not how it works.
Right.
And the fact that it's going on so long, in fact, I trace this back all the way to the Firestone Explorer fiasco. I believe that was a problem driven by Ford's purchasing policies. And my fear is that Ford is too busy trying to find out who to blame than to get to the root cause of the problem. Or when they do get to the root cause of the problem, it's the actual physical defect that caused it. And I believe, this is just my opinion, they don't go deeper to find out what caused that root cause. You know, was it a lack of development time? Was it not enough staffing? Was it not enough collaboration between engineering, manufacturing? What was it?
Yeah.
But I believe it's a structural issue within the company.
Yeah, so I was looking at the NHTSA website, and so I see that Ford has 38 recalls now, and it's 6.6 million vehicles. General Motors has 13 recalls now for 1.4 million vehicles, and FCA has 13 recalls for 570,000 vehicles. So I mean, the delta is just remarkable.
Yeah, and you know, Gary, you're counting numbers there. You know, the other number to look at is warranty cost, and Ford is spending. It's up and down, you know, every year for every company, but it's spending about $2 to $3 billion a year more on warranty than General Motors does. I mean, if they could just fix that problem, they'd drop $2 to $3 billion to the bottom line. It's their greatest opportunity. It's the lowest hanging fruit they've got, and they know that. Look, they know all this better than we do. You know, I've got my opinions, what's going on. They got the actual internal data, but they have not fixed the problem.
Well, you're mentioning costs. So John Lawler, their CFO, made a presentation this week, and in this number, which, speaking of dollars, which I found to be astonishing, he said it costs $25,000 more to build a Mach-E than an Edge.
Yeah.
I mean, how can they do this?
Well, you know, and Farley's talked about this too. Farley was the first one to talk about it. 18,000 of that 25,000 is just the battery. And you know, then you get into other things, you know, it's probably the power electronics, it's the inverter, it's, you know, maybe it doesn't have as much sales volume as the Edge does. But you know, what he also said that what I found extraordinary is that when they launched the Mach-E, it was actually profitable, both from a contribution margin standpoint and from just a net basis, and that profit has been wiped out because of rising raw material costs.
Lithium, nickel, yeah, cobalt, yep, yeah. You know, that I would make an observation though. If you remember early on when you know EVs were discussed by CEOs of different companies, initially Ford was saying they were not going to be involved on the battery side. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And they kind of got into the game late. And I'm wondering, is that part of the problem here in terms of not having cost control over some of the raw materials?
I don't think so. Look, you know, most companies, car companies, are still buying their batteries. It's from LG or SK or Panasonic or whatever. So the price is the price.
Yes.
And you get a discount if you buy more of them. So I don't think that's the problem. You know, what Ford said all along is...
But again, is GM experiencing that same escalation in price? I don't get a sense they are.
not in raw material prices, or they are in raw material prices, but in the overall system, they're probably ahead because,
Yeah.
you know, GM, other than Tesla, is the only one right now pretty much making their own batteries.
Yeah.
That's not entirely true, but I mean, amongst the big
Right.
traditional automakers, it is.
Well, I know while I was there at GM, you know, Tom Stevens, who you may recall,
Yep.
Tom was the powertrain guy, and he made it his business to know how the motors went together and how the batteries were constructed. He thought it was very important for GM to have an in-depth understanding of those two areas. And like I said, I was a little surprised when Farley, again, this is probably 2 or 3 years ago,
Right.
When the industry was not as committed to EVs, he was saying batteries are commodity. We're going to buy them, and it's not that important to have control over them. And I think some of these manufacturers that got in early with the battery suppliers, I think they have a different business proposition going on there.
Well, they have an advantage. They have a technical advantage, no question about it. And look, the whole, I don't know when it was late 2019 to early 2020, the industry flipped. And it went from EV skeptical to all in, all the way, mega, investments in it. And part of it was as volumes came, you have your classic make buy decision. Am I going to make it or am I going to buy it? And Hau Thai-Tang at Ford had talked very openly about this. Look, and this goes back a couple of years ago. The volumes aren't there yet. We're going to buy, but at some point we're going to hit a crossover point, and it's going to make sense for us to do this in-house. But what they've all discovered now, to your point, Jack, is you better have very intimate knowledge right down to the molecular level of the chemistry in the battery. What the hell's going on?
Plus, who's supplying the raw materials? Where is the lithium actually coming from? Is it somewhere in Chile, or is it somewhere in the United States? So, I mean, not having a handle on that stuff, that's a problem.
Right. See, but I think that without getting too far back into the the life cycle of batteries and things like that, I mean, the thing that I wonder about is that, okay, if Ford is basically saying that it is costing significantly more for them to make
than it was
sell a Mach-E than an Edge, which are comparable size vehicles, then the thing that I wonder about is that whether General Motors is talking about it or FCA is talking about it or, fill in the blank is talking about it, are EVs being unrealistically priced in the market right now for, mass consumers? I mean, it's one thing for, you buy a Lucid for, 170 grand. I mean, somehow you can, hide a lot in that. But I mean, for a mainstream vehicle, I mean, what's going to happen with Lightning? What's going to happen with the Silverado EV? What's going to happen with the Ram EV?
I guess the other thing I would point out is, if you remember, might have been about 2 weeks ago, GM announced they were going to have a price reduction on bolts. In other words, and it was significant. It was
$6 grand, $6,000.
Right. So
okay, but how much of that is basically a marketing move? Okay, because as they had that problem. They had the big recall. They didn't sell any. But
they're also talking about $30,000 Equinoxes and Trailblazers.
Right.
So they must have a handle on this cost.
They do. And here's what's interesting. So GM CFO also spoke at that Deutsche conference where Ford CFO was at. And he said they were able to take $6 grand out of the Volt, and they are going to eliminate all kinds of other things that they're doing, largely in discounts to dealers. They're just going to, and to consumers, they're just going to eliminate that. And he said that's largely going to make up for the $6 grand difference.
Right.
Sure sounds like there was a lot of incentives and discounts going on. But
there was a $7,500 federal discount, right?
Well, that went away. GM capped out on that,
so
that's gone. Look, they need to jumpstart Bolt production. They need to get the world believing that GM really is serious and is capable and is successful in selling a lot of electric cars. When you get to the $30,000 Equinox, what this guy said was there is so much data monetization, subscription services, and other kind of services that they can sell they're counting on that to make up the margin difference.
So
they're looking at the total package, not just the manufacturing cost.
All right. So basically this physical thing that they're going to manufacture that has tires and brakes and glass and seats and so on. Okay. They're going to do that at a loss, maybe 25 grand, and they're going to make it up by selling you
services.
Details. I mean,
features, entertainment,
or
t-shirts.
Maybe they don't sell it at a loss, but it doesn't have the margins of the ICE vehicle.
Right.
And so their plan is to make up most of those margins. They're not diluting themselves. I mean, look, unless this industry gets a handle on battery costs, this EV transition is going to be short-lived. I mean, it is. They've got to solve the issue. They've got the money now. They're spending tens of billions of dollars every year on developing this. But if they don't get a return, if they don't have money coming back in, those coffers are going to run dry, and that's going to be the end of the EV revolution. So they've got to get a handle on the cost of the battery.
Mary Barra said this week also that they have a two-track strategy, okay? So they have their ICE strategy and their EV strategy, and that the ICE strategy with pickups and SUVs will fund the EV strategy. Okay, so I put to you guys, with gas being $5 a gallon plus across the country,
and interest rates going up,
but I mean,
how are they going to fund the EV revolution?
Who's going to be buying full-size pickups and full-size SUVs? I was looking at some numbers that Kelley Blue Book came out, and they basically are looking at, okay, what it costs a person who has a vehicle, $5 a gallon. So for let me see here.
Do the math.
Full-size pickup truck. Okay. Monthly cost for a gallon of gas, for buying gas for a vehicle. So for a full-size pickup truck in June 2021, the amount a person would pay is $132. Now it's $342 a month, right? And
crude's $140 a barrel.
I mean, full-size SUVs, it's $379 a month versus last year it was $146. Okay.
Listen,
where's this money coming from?
Things could change. But at this snapshot in time, based on what they were saying yesterday, demand is still through the roof.
Yeah.
They don't see any let up in demand whatsoever. And, inventory is still tight. Their order books are jam-packed. Like I said, that could change. I'm just saying at this snapshot in time, the car companies are reporting they still have not seen any slack off in demand, including full-size pickups and SUVs.
Okay, so again, Lawler also said that he's beginning to see delinquencies happening in car loans. Okay, so I checked the Cox Automotive number. The estimated monthly average payment for a vehicle right now is $712 a month.
Wow.
Okay, $712 a month, and let's put $300 a month for gasoline on top of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how this is sustainable. And yes, it's a snapshot in time right now, but I don't think anybody's saying that we're going to see gas prices go down anytime soon. Jack, as you mentioned, the interest rates went up yesterday, so car loans are going to become more expensive.
And what's progress like in Ukraine right now? Do we look like we've got things under control over there?
Not at all.
I heard another $1 billion in federal spending to help the Ukrainians out with the war.
Right.
Things are not going great. It's very back and forth.
And so a thing that I was wondering about is that, as you're talking about prices here, and this sort of surprised me, that if you look at average transaction prices, that there's only one General Motors brand that has an average transaction price, according to Kelley Blue Book, that's under 40 grand. And that's Buick, which is at 38 grand.
Okay.
Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Nissan, Toyota are all, their average transaction prices are all none of them higher than 37,000. Okay, so I mean,
full-size trucks and full-size SUVs.
Yeah,
that has changed that equation.
That's the whole thing, right?
Right.
They're 50 grand. You know, some of these pickup trucks, they're 100 grand.
So what happens to the domestics when people say, I can't afford to buy one of those things?
Well, and the other thing I would point out is these trucks are very, very durable. If you don't buy a brand new one, you've had it for 3 or 4 years, you can put it off. Those trucks will keep on going with a little help, a little maintenance. I mean, they'll do 200,000 miles. So you got a problem with the car park there. If it's mostly, most of your customers are driving full-size pickup trucks, they can stay on the fence for a long time.
Yes, they can. No, to your point, Gary, look, if suddenly tomorrow America wakes up and decides it doesn't want full-size pickups anymore, the Detroit 3 are dead. Dead. So
trust me, something like 80 or 90% of profits at those companies come from those vehicles, those specific vehicles.
Sure.
That's where they make the money.
Absolutely. And this is why other car companies, non-Detroit 3, want to get in on the truck segment.
Right.
They all do.
So do they all do, or do they all did?
Well, look at what's happened. Nissan tried.
Tell me what the price of gasoline is.
Yeah.
Nissan tried with the Titan.
When you were at GM and you were involved in product development things going on over there, I mean, did you guys look at stuff like that and say,
heck, I remember my boss telling me, okay, I want you to create a scenario where gasoline's $4 a gallon. Tell us what that does to the portfolio. So we looked hard at it. I don't think anybody had an idea that it was going to get this crazy. And I mean, it's $5 now. I'm hearing $6 by the end of the year. Yep. And those are not that's not outrageous. That's a possibility.
Right. Absolutely true.
So,
that's what the oil experts are saying. $140 a barrel, $6 a gallon. But here's what's crazy. Like I said, so far it has not impacted demand.
Right.
And so far it really hasn't impacted driving. I mean, here in Michigan, everybody's still going 80 miles an hour. And, there was just a report the other day that if you look at traffic in major cities around the world, New York, London, Tokyo, Shanghai, it's just as bad as it was before the pandemic hit. So far, people are just tightening up their belts and dealing with it.
Right. I mean, the other issue is a lot of the things that these trucks are used for, particularly the pickup trucks. Bales of hay don't shrink, loads of lumber don't shrink. You need these vehicles to get the job done. And it does cut into your profit, but at the same time, how are you going to get it done otherwise? You're not going to use your Honda Civic to haul lumber.
Right, Jack. But isn't there a case where you have the vocational purchaser of the pickup truck, and you have the avocational person who basically says, I want a pickup truck because they're cool and I like it, and
Marlboro man.
Right. But getting back to the whole EV thing, I mean, one of the things that I was wondering about that it seems to be interesting is that it's a little more difficult and a little more expensive, I think, to become an auto manufacturer than maybe some of these companies thought. ELMS, which we had on the show, filed Chapter 7.
Yep.
Reportedly, Canoe's got financial problems. Lordstown Motors apparently has financial problems. Faraday Future, and I was looking at even companies that we think are more solid. So I was looking. Rivian's 52-week high on the stock market was 179. Its low was 1925. I mean, it's like Lucid Motors 52-week high was $57 and change. Its low is $13.25. I mean, okay, so those two companies, Rivian's got Amazon, Lucid's got the Saudi government. They'll probably do all right, but
not according to Elon Musk. He says they're going to go bankrupt unless they cut costs.
And he would know. He has lived this dream. I mean, fortunately, he's in a different place, but I mean, the gateway drug is building prototypes. You build these beautiful prototypes. They drive beautifully. They look fabulous. And you've spent let's say you spent $30 million and you're like, see, we can get this done. And then all of a sudden you're saying, now we're going to build them in volume. And you go to them, you're going to build a manufacturing plant. And now you're talking about some serious money, like 1.6 billion, a truck plant, maybe $3 billion. I mean, that's kind of what Elon ran into when he started building his cars. I mean, it looked easy once, when you were on the pathway, but all of a sudden, man, the road gets very steep.
Yeah.
So Elon's quote was, and this was published to the Tesla owners Silicon Valley YouTube channel, quote, "Unless something changes significantly with Rivian and Lucid, they will both go bankrupt. I hope they are able to do something, but unless they cut their costs dramatically, they will end up in the cemetery like every other car company, with the exception of Tesla and Ford." I didn't realize that all these other companies.
Well, that's his shorthand reference that, General Motors and then Chrysler went bankrupt. Ford did not go bankrupt, and Tesla has not gone bankrupt, obviously. But yeah, look, I mean, the other thing is it's these SPAC fueled startups that are all of a sudden running into problems. They got a big chunk of money up front. They burned through it, or they burned through a huge chunk of it. Now, to your point, Jack, they're in production hell. They can't get lithium. They can't get batteries. They're struggling.
Right.
So, I mean, this may sound like a crazy thing, but why not? So, I mean, what is the possibility that something like micromobility will become more of a thing and they'll be less dependent on people driving the aforementioned full-size pickups and so on to do some of their activities? I mean, obviously, you're not going to Traverse City on a scooter or, going to the grocery store on an e-bike. But, it seems like there'd be some opportunities to change.
Has the medical community been notified of all this? Because that's an issue. That is an issue. I mean, particularly for, folks that are just showing up, renting one, and then trying to run across town. They're the folks that are getting in trouble. And the injuries these people are suffering they're not insignificant. I mean, talk to any ER doctor. He'll tell you broken legs. I mean, head injuries. It's quite serious. Plus, nobody wants to wear a helmet. I mean, as a motorcycle rider, I ride very differently than I did when I first started riding. And I'm a lot more cautious today than I've ever been. And I still have close calls. And I'm a very experienced rider. I started riding when I was 16 years old. So
okay. So McKinsey ran some numbers and they looked at Germany. Okay. So in Germany, there are 120,000 e-scooters that are out there. Those scooters, 70 million miles in trips were taken. They estimate that would equate to 90% of all Germans taking one trip. There's $110 million in revenue made, and 65% of Germans said that they would consider micromobility as an option for transportation. Okay. So, Germany, it's, a place where there are reasonable people and they may get into accidents, but clearly some places are looking at this.
Well, yeah, look, I mean, traffic congestion, which we talked about earlier, is horrific in any major city. It can be slow as molasses to get in a car and try to drive someplace. Whereas micromobility offers a whole lot more flexibility and faster speed. And it's not just, the electric scooters. We just reported on the US Post Office and even UPS are looking at these electric assist, bicycle jitneys for delivering packages in high density population areas. So I think micromobility its time is right around the corner, Gary. I think it could be huge, but it's got to expand beyond just the little scooters that you run around on. It's got to expand beyond e-bikes and the like. There's all kinds of opportunity for very small vehicles. Now, because I've looked into this a lot, if Europe is crisscrossed with all kinds of bike paths. I mean, my gosh, especially if you go to a place like the Netherlands, you can bike anywhere that you want to go, but it has to be a pedal operated vehicle. And this is true all across Europe. If you have a pure electric drive, they're banned from bike paths. You're not allowed on them. It has to be a pedal with some sort of electric assist. In the US, you can have a 1 horsepower motor, which can easily get you up to 30 miles an hour. That's banned in Europe. The most you can use is like a 250 kilowatt motor, which is
I think
a third of a horsepower.
Yeah, I think 16 mile an hour is the top speed for micro mobility stuff. When you're hitting 30, let's just say you're in the orange zone of the law.
Look, I've ridden e-bikes and I've gone that fast. And
yeah, they're fun, but
it's fun as long as you're on an open bike path with nobody around. I mean, if you have people with
I hope you're wearing a helmet, John.
I was wearing, I wear a helmet. Yeah,
good.
I do.
You got it.
All right. So for the people who are listening to this on a podcast, they didn't see your face, Jack, when John was talking about this possible explosion of micromobility. You look like your head was going to explode. So you're not down with this, right?
I'm not, because I've done an awful lot of reading about the problems associated with it in regard to injuries, and again, it's people that are just starting to get with it. They're renting one for the first time, or it's actually some of the sophomoric folks that have been riding them for a while, and they've gotten a little too relaxed about traffic laws. Last time I checked, the FARS data, there are an awful lot of people that are having encounters with trucks today, because there's a lot more of those on the road, as we were talking about earlier, SUVs and pickups. And the injuries from getting hit by a truck are different and more severe than they are from a car. And I'm assuming that the same thing applies, to a pedestrian as would somebody using micromobility. It's almost like being a bicyclist.
Right.
Well, look, bicycles will be part of it. So I mean, and many of those trucks will be parked because that $5 a gallon gasoline, they won't be.
You still got to dodge around them, Gary. You got to avoid hitting one.
Yeah, but congestion's not going to ease up. And that's why I think micromobility is going to catch on. And Jack, I don't know what the solution is, but it's probably education and enforcement.
There's probably a place for them. It's got to be the right environment. Mm-hmm. And I think, New York City has an awful lot of messengers using electrified bicycles today. And there are a lot of stories about, not just the bicyclists getting hurt, but, folks that are, pedestrians that are getting hit by the folks on the bike.
Well, that happened even before the e-bike showed up. Yeah, I mean, those messengers ride like lunatics.
That's fair. That's fair.
Didn't you see that Kevin Bacon movie? I mean, what was it, Quicksilver or something like that?
But an e-bike is heavier. It's got a battery pack and it's got the motor, and the injuries, again, they're more severe. So I like having that car around me. You can hear me, John.
Yeah, I know. But I'm just saying the reality is congestion's getting worse. Yeah. It's not getting better.
Right.
And, cities are even closing down city centers to vehicles. And the only thing that's going to make up the difference is micromobility.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So here's a final set of numbers to wrap this whole thing up. Okay. It'll be wrapped up in a bow. And so according to Bloomberg NEF for 2021, that was the most recent figures, that looking at EV fleets globally, passenger cars, 16.7 million, okay, EVs globally. 2 and 3 wheelers, electric, 275 million. So I think John's right. Sorry, Jack. So,
well, we'll see.
They're out there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you're talking countries like India, especially.
Exactly. Yeah. Or yes, absolutely. Indonesia. Absolutely. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But those, again, it's a different road environment.
Yeah, who was it?
Responsible, Jack. You're just completely responsible, Jack.
Audi. I think it was Audi just came out. They're bringing an electric tuk-tuk to India.
Yes, I saw that.
Audi.
Yep.
Let's not say it's going to Volkswagen, the people's brand.
Right.
It's Audi doing this.
The e-tron tanks they build, and now they're going to build these little tiny micro vehicles. Yeah, I saw it. So, well, even they see an opportunity. So if they get a player like that that's looking at it, there must be something to it. But again, you got to find the right place to put it.
Right. Yep. That it, Gary?
That's it.
Okay, we're going to wrap up. Jack Keebler, thanks so much for coming on the show. We definitely got to get you back.
Thanks, Jack.
Just a fountain of knowledge there. It's great.
Thanks. Take care, guys.
That's great. Thanks, Gary. Yeah. See everybody next week.
Take care.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey, and by the Michigan Economic Development Corporation.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.